بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام الأتمان الأكملان على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, all praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and may the most perfect and complete salutations be upon our Prophet Muhammad, upon his family and companions, and whomever follows him in righteousness until the last day. To proceed, we left off with the author's statement, ودليل الذبح قوله تعالى قل إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين لا شريك له وبذلك أمرت وأنا أول المسلمين ومن السنة لعن الله من ذبح لغير الله. And the evidence for slaughtering is his statement, exalted is he. Say indeed, my prayer, my rites of sacrifice, my living and my dying are for Allah, Lord of the worlds. No partner has he, and this I have been commanded, and I am the first among you of the Muslims. And from the Sunnah, Allah curses anyone who slaughters to other than Allah. The author here refers to an act of worship called slaughtering, dhabh in Islam. And we can speak about it in two topics. First of all, what is the definition of slaughtering or ad-dhabh in Islam? The definition is to spill the soul of something specific. And what is meant by it here is that it is the slaughtering of cattle, the slaughtering of camels, cows, sheep, goats, etc. Slaughtering for Allah's sake, to get closer to Allah, is in fact an act of worship in Islam. A Muslim is rewarded for, and this is when the Muslim spills the blood of the animal he's slaughtering for Allah's sake subhanahu wa ta'ala. The evidence the author used is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's statement, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ وَبِذَلِكَ أُمِرْتُ وَأَنَا أَوَّلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Say indeed, my prayer, my rites of sacrifice, my living, my dying are for Allah, Lord of the worlds. No partner has he, and this I have been commanded, and I am the first among you of the Muslims. This evidence that is in fact slaughtering is an act of worship. Allah also says, فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ. So pray to your Lord and sacrifice to him alone. I.e., that for him should be your prayer, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and for him, subhanahu wa ta'ala, should be your sacrifice, and to no other but him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. The lawful slaughtering in Islam, the dhabh that is lawful to do in Islam, falls under two scenarios. The first is that you slaughter for Allah to glorify him subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are rewarded, as we mentioned this before. Things like this fall under like the hadi, which is the sacrificial animal during Hajj time, or the udhiyah, which is a sacrificial animal. And any slaughtering that is used as a form of charity and a form of getting closer to Allah by feeding the poor and whatnot with your sacrifice, with your slaughtering the animal. The second is that you slaughter to eat, but that you mention Allah's name upon it. This is permissible in its asl. It's rewarded. You're rewarded for mentioning Allah's name on it, and rewarding for feeding himself, feeding your household, the poor, feeding guests. All this you are rewarded for by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second topic we can speak about in slaughtering is that whoever slaughters and intended with the slaughter to glorify other than Allah with this slaughter, like a dead pious saint or a jinn or the likes of those things, then this is shirk, because we mentioned slaughtering is an act of worship, and whoever directs an act of worship to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has fallen into shirk. The author used as evidence the hadith on the authority of Ali radiyallahu anhu in the Sahih, and it is in it, Allah curses anyone who slaughters to other than Allah. In the hadith there's la'an, this la'an or curse. When it falls upon an action, it shows the clear prohibition of that particular action and the curse of the person doing it. This takes us to the prohibited slaughterings. And know that the prohibited slaughterings has four situations. One, that a person slaughter for other than Allah by intention or by utterance. or by utterance. So he intends with his slaughter other than Allah, like the jinn or an idol or a dead saint. He also mentions other than Allah's name. So instead of saying Bismillah when he slaughters, they would say Bism, the name of the saint, in the name of Saint so-and-so, or in the name of angel so-and-so. This is not permissible, and this falls under major shirk. The second situation where slaughtering is prohibited is that a person slaughter for Allah by intention. However, when he slaughtered, he mentioned other than Allah's name upon it. An example of this is a person on the day of Eid, for example, slaughters a sacrificial animal and his intention is that this is for Allah. However, he mentions other than Allah's name upon it when he slaughters, like in the name of Saint so-and-so, in the name of angel so-and-so. This is shirk because he directed an act of worship, which is mentioning Allah's name upon the slaughter, to other than Allah. The third is that a person slaughtered to other than Allah by intention, but mentions Allah's name in utterance. So an example of this is when he slaughters, he says Bismillah, but his intention is to glorify that dead saint or that jinn, and this is all not permissible because it's directing an act of worship to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The fourth situation is that when he slaughters without mentioning Allah's name upon it at all, i.e. without saying Bismillah, and he intends by this to get closer to other than Allah, this is shirk waliyadu billah. An example of this is what happens to those weak souls. When a sorcerer or a person that deals with black magic tells them go out and go slaughter a rooster or a goat or whatnot, and do not mention Allah's name upon it. They make clear, do not mention Allah's name upon it. And when these weak souls, we ask Allah safety and well-being to fall into this, when those weak souls do this, they fall into shirk, because when they don't mention Allah's name on the slaughter, they're doing this to get closer to the jinn, and that's what the sorcerer and the person who deals with black magic wants them to do. Waliyadu billah. In summary, it's obligatory upon you that when you want to slaughter, that you glorify Allah alone and no other. And when you do the actual slaughtering, mention Allah's name and seek out none other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your intention. Now, we can move on to the next act of worship, which is the last act of worship we'll be speaking about in this series before we move on to the next asl, of course, in the next lesson. So let's concentrate on what the author said here. وَدَلِيلُ النَّذْرِ قَوْلُهُ تَعَالَى يُوفُونَ بِالنَّذْرِ وَيَخَافُونَ يَوْمًا كَانَ شَرُّهُ مُسْتَطِيرًا. And the evidence for the vowing, is his statement, exalted is he, they are those who fulfill their vows and fear a day whose evil will be widespread. This is the last act of worship the author mentions here, confirming, of course, that it need to be done for Allah alone, of course, like all the other acts of worship. And this act of worship is known as a nadhr, or making a vow, or the vow. We can speak about it in two topics. First, what is the definition of nadhr, or vowing, in Islam? A vow is that an accountable person commit himself or herself to something that isn't already obligatory upon them in the Sharia. An example of this is that a person may say, by Allah, upon me a vow to fast an entire month. This particular fasting, non-Ramadan of course, is not wajib, obligatory in the asl of the Sharia. In principle, nadhr vowing is an act of worship. It's not permissible to direct it to other than Allah. Whomsoever directs it to other than Allah has fallen into shirk. This is because that a person didn't vow to other than Allah except that his heart has a sort of glorification to the person he's vowing to. He thinks that person he's vowing to has the ability to affect the affairs of the universe, and when he vows for him, he thinks benefit will come. Waliyadu billah. An example of lawful nadhr is vowing to say, by Allah, upon me a vow to read Quran. By Allah, upon me a vow to do Hajj. By Allah, upon me to fast 1 month for your sake, Ya Allah. Whether they attach something to it, like if Allah cures my sick person, then by Allah upon me a vow to do Hajj. Or whether they keep it open-ended, like not attach anything to it, by Allah upon me a vow to do such and such. Now, What about in regards to the hadith on the authority of Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, in which the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam forbade the nadhr and said, إِنَّهُ لَا يَأْتِ بِخَيْرٍ وَإِنَّمَا يُسْتَخْرَجُ بِهِ مِنَ الْبَخِيلِ. It does not bring good. Indeed, it is only a means by which something is extracted from the miserly. And in the hadith on the authority of Abu Hurairah, إِنَّ النَّذْرَ لَا يُقَرِّبُ مِنْ إِبْنِ آدَمَ شَيْئًا لَمْ يَكُنِ اللَّهُ قَدَّرَهُ لَهُ وَلَكِنَّ النَّذْرُ يُوَافِقُ الْقَدَرَ فيخرج بذلك من البخيل ما لم يكن البخيل يريد أن يخرج. The vow does not bring anything near to the son of Adam which Allah has not ordained for him. But at times, the vow coincides with destiny. And this is how something extracted from the miserly person, which that miser was not willing to give. Now, the ulama have answered this into the scholars with one of two answers. The first, the vow that is forbidden is when it's attached to something, almost like you're making a condition upon Allah. Like if you say, if Allah grants me so and so, then I will vow to Him. It's like you're making a condition with Allah. And this is thinks that Allah will not grant you what you seek for or what you ask for, except that you do a vow to Allah. This is in fact having bad manners to Allah and having su' al-khuluq with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bad manners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now the second opinion is that nadhr in and of itself is forbidden, is la yajuz. However, if a person vows to vow a worship, it is not permissible to make it except for Allah. This answer is probably the closer of the two, the more correct answer here. This answer is used by those people of knowledge that found that the vow is not permissible. Some found it to be makruh or disliked, like the madhab of Ahmad ibn Hanbal or the Hanabila, whilst others found it to be haram. That vow in and of itself is prohibited and haram, and that of course is the choice of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. Now, the second topic, it's been established that vowing nadhr for other than Allah is not permissible. Like we mentioned, it's directing an act of worship to other than Allah. And to like other than Allah, and therefore, of course, it constitutes shirk. So some of the non-permissible vows is that someone would say, if my sick person is cured, I vow that I will slaughter at the tombstone of Saint so-and-so. All this are forms of shirk, and we ask Allah's safety and well-being from this. With this, the author has come to an end of the first asl of these three. We're doing the explanation of the three fundamental principles. We finish now with this, the first fundamental principle, the first asl, which is the most important asl, that a servant know his Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing Him by singling him out subhanahu wa ta'ala in His uluhiyyah, in His divinity subhanahu wa ta'ala, to single Him out in worshipping Him subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and not to commit shirk, associating partners with Allah, in all acts of worship of the hearts, acts of worship of the utterances, acts of worship of the actions of the limbs, which are practical acts of worship. It's knowing Him subhanahu wa ta'ala in His rububiyyah, in His lordship, and it's knowing Him subhanahu wa ta'ala in His asma' wa sifat, in His most beautiful names and attributes. And we come to an end there. So in the next lesson, bi'idhnillah ta'ala, we'll start the explanation of the second fundamental principle, which is knowing the religion of Islam with its evidences. Until that time, bi'idhnillah, I bid you farewell. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.